Good afternoon, everybody, and happy holidays. This is Jo Morris with the Fastener Training Institute, and I would like to welcome you to our December webinar, Getting Familiar with IFI's Updated Collection of Resources for Fastener Specifications. For today's webinar, all participants are muted. This is an interactive webinar, and it is intended to answer your questions. So when you have a question, please type it into your question box of your control panel and then click Submit. We will answer all questions at the very end after the presentation. I am absolutely honored to work with both of our presenters today. Carmen Vertullo is our webinar expert, presenter, trainer, and consultant, and Salim Brahimi is the Director of Engineering and Technology at the Industrial Fasteners Institute. They are two of the brightest men I have ever met, so without any more information from me, I am happy to turn this over to Carmen and Salim.
All right, well, thank you very much, Jo, and thank you all for attending. Of all the webinars that we have done, I think this one might be the most important and information-filled webinar that you'll see, because you're going to learn about some resources and how to use them that are just absolutely essential for all fastener professionals. And it really is a great pleasure to present with the best fastener professional I've ever met, Salim Brahimi. So if you've seen him in a classroom, I think you know who he is. You'll get to meet him in just a minute in some more detail. So it's important to let you all know that whenever you attend a webinar or training of any kind, whatever technical information you get, please independently verify that before you use it in any application or with a customer or a supplier or in your own situation through an authoritative source, so that when you're going to use that information, you don't say, Carmen said this in the webinar or Salim told me. You're able to actually say ASTM says this or IFI says this, so that you sound smart and you give your customers or your employees information that they can actually use. If you have any problem accessing that independently verifiable authoritative citation, you just email me or Salim and we will help you find it. In any case, the Fastener Training Institute or your presenters are not responsible for anything that might occur from the use or misuse of this material. Okay, today's program, we're going to give you a brief introduction to Fastener Consensus Standards organizations, the ones that matter most to us. And we're going to talk about why fastener standards are so important to our industry. And most importantly, we're going to give you a demonstration of some fastener standards resources. And these include, in particular, the new IFI 2018 Book of Fastener Standards, the IFI Online Book of Fastener Standards, the ISO online browsing platform for ISO metric fastener standards, the IFI Technology Connection, and a few other resources for fastener standards that you should be familiar with. So we have a lot to present and not a whole lot of time, but it's not going to be a lot of detail or technical information, so we should be able to get through it okay. So how do we get technical knowledge? How do we get the information that we need? Well, in our industry, and most industries are the same way, we depend on consensus standards organizations to develop these informational standards for us. And those include all these that you see on the screen here. They're not all necessarily consensus standards organizations. When we say that the word consensus standard or CSO, that means there's a collaboration of experts, people who come together to come to a consensus on developing and maintaining a particular standard. So if you look at this screen, the consensus standards organizations would be ASTM, who develops standards for materials and performance. ASME develops standards the same way, but primarily dimensional standards in the fastener industries, but not exclusively. ISO, and we say ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, develops many, if not most or all of our important metric standards. And the Industrial Fasteners Institute, not necessarily a consensus standards organization, because it generally only takes one or two people to develop a standard there. And the Research Council on Structural Connections, which does not develop fastener standards, but a standard for the use of standards. Of fasteners. These other organizations, ASQ, Pacific West Fasteners Association, and FTA, Midwest Fasteners, our friends at Fully Threaded Radio, those are all trade associations, but they also provide training and great access to the information that you need, as well as, of course, our favorite, the Industrial Fasteners Institute, the Fastener Training Institute. helps bring you information on fastener standards. So join some of these organizations, get involved. That's how technical knowledge is primarily acquired, by getting involved. So we can go to Google when we need an answer for something, can't we? But I recommend not using Google unless you're well informed enough to tell the truth from not the truth. So that doesn't mean the internet is not good, though, because we have a really cool internet-based application called the IFI Technology Connection that you'll learn more about. I would want to encourage you, if you ever see something on Google when you do a search and it doesn't sound quite right, let me know about it. I have a collection of bad fastener information from Google, and I can't really share it in a public setting because it comes from people that you might know. But there's a lot of bad fastener information on Google. So use an authoritative source if you're going to use the internet to get your fastener technical knowledge. So we talked about most of these important fastener standards organizations just a minute ago. ISO, ASME, ASTM, SAE, IFI. There's a Canadian Fasteners Institute as well, and another one, the Research Council on Structural Connections. And we're going to probably dwell mainly on ASTM and ASME and ISO standards today through the resources of the Industrial Fasteners Institute. When we would present in the past, one of the things we would have to remind our students of is that these books change, and as they change, so the standards become obsolete. And I would say to them, your 7th edition is no longer good for fastener standards. It might have some other good information in it, but not for standards. Then along came the 8th. We X'd that off, and then along came the 9th. Well, now they're all not necessarily useless. They are useful, but you have to be careful because standards change. And so now we have the 10th edition IFI Fastener Standards. And I'm going to turn this over to Salim, and he's going to tell you some things about the Industrial Fasteners Institute and why it's important that you be aware of what they have to offer. Go ahead, please, Salim.
Yes, hello everybody. This is Salim Brahimi. I'm the Technical Director of the Industrial Fasteners Institute. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to start my bit by just giving you an introduction to the IFI. So the IFI is an association, and it's an association of North American fastener manufacturers, and it's specific to the manufacturers. And basically, in our mandate, we engage with suppliers of fasteners, the customers that are using the fasteners, with government, as well as with the public at large. And really what we're trying to do is enhance the competitiveness of the industry, both from a manufacturing base, but as well as from the user base. The IFI is headquartered in Cleveland. In fact, it was established in the late 1930s. Since joining the IFI in 2015, IFI now has a satellite office in Montreal because that's where I live and work from. So if you need any information about the IFI and our products, you can go to the website, which is www.infast.org. Just a little bit about how the IFI is organized. Essentially, we have about 150 member companies, and these member companies are divided into divisions based on the industrial sector that they service. So we have Division 1, which are industrial products, and Division 2 manufacturers, which service the aerospace industry, and Division 3 manufacturers who service the automotive industry. And then what we have is what we call the ASD, or the Associate Suppliers Division. And in terms of the geographical distribution, IFI is North American, so we have the bulk of our members in the United States and a significant number of members in Canada. And up until recently, we now have 2 Mexican members as well. These next slides are going to give you an idea of these different products that the divisions produce. So the industrial products is the broadest category. It can be anywhere from construction products, structural fasteners, to fasteners used in machinery, equipment, to the standard hardware that you find at your hardware store, and so on. So it's the broadest category that we have. And then the Division 2 is aerospace. Most of these manufacturers are based in California, more in Southern California, and they produce fasteners almost entirely for the aerospace industry. It's a very different market, very different criteria in terms of the quality demands and the supplier quality requirements. So that's its own division and operates very much on its own in terms of the needs that are serviced. Division 3, Automotive. These are manufacturers that supply almost entirely or entirely the automotive and or truck industries. Most of these manufacturers are located in the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois area, but a little bit outside of those areas as well, but primarily in the Midwest. And then the Associate Supplier Division. Now, these are companies that produce products that are either used or they are services to the fastener industry. So it could be companies that provide plating and coating services, heat treating services, all the major steel mills that supply rod product to the fastener manufacturers are members of the IFI, as well as manufacturers of equipment, whether they be cold heading equipment, thread rolling equipment, sorting and inspection equipment. These are all companies that are IFI members through our Associate Suppliers Division. Now, just a little bit about the technical activities, which goes to the heart of what we're talking about today. We provide technical and engineering support through the role that I play and the people who support my function. And this is basically people who will call and ask for questions. And it's limited to our membership and companies that subscribe to our IFI Technology Connection. We're also very much involved in the development of fastener standards. We have our own collection of IFI standards. But at the same time, we get involved in the development of the consensus standards, the ASME, ASTM, ISO standards as well. We also provide a family of technical resources. These may be offering different groupings or single standards and publications and books, as well as technical bulletins. These are one-page documents that provide information on a specific topic. And the IFI also plays a role in terms of sponsoring research and development. IFI is a member of the Bolting Technology Council, as a member of the Research Council on Structural Connections, and so IFI monies go towards the research projects that are initiated by those organizations. And IFI was a major sponsor of the McGill University Hydrogen Embrittlement Facility, which was a facility that I created 12 years ago, but with great amount of help from the IFI. IFI also does a lot of training and educational programs. Lawrence Klaus is our Director of Training and Education. So we provide training classes to our members. We call those the members-only classes, but we're also very much involved with the Fastener Training Institute. That's the Fastener Training Institute is putting on this webinar today. And so we sponsor a lot of the Fastener Training Institute classes and the programs, and we're very proud to do that. We also, in our training, we do, there's a lot of emphasis on understanding the standards and hands-on, basically touching and feeling the parts and testing the parts. So a lot of that is part of it, and so, again, very, very strong programs. We're also involved with the Fastener Education Foundation and Rock Valley College, where these organizations, or at least Rock Valley College, is dedicated towards developing header operators and machine operators in the fastener industry. So today we're going to be talking about these products, basically the Book of Fastener Standards. This book has been published in one shape or another since 1940. The first publication was a small little handheld pocket-sized book. And every few years, the IFI published a new version of the book where the standards would be updated. And today we have our 2018 edition, also known as the 10th edition, which was published and made available as of August of last year. But the real innovation here is that this book is now available as an online fastener collection. And the main benefit there, you'll see the details, but the main benefit there is that the online collection is always current. So whenever a standard changes, it is updated in our collection. And so you basically always have access to the latest revision of the standards. So the other product we're going to highlight today very quickly is the IFI Technology Connection. And this is basically an online database that combines all the technical data in all of the standards, and whether they be metric standards or inch standards. And you'll see the power of it. What it does is it makes it so that you can generate a one-page sheet that specifies all the dimensional and material details related to a specific part. The Technology Connection has a number of other tools which we will highlight as well. And that's it for now.
All right. So we'll start off telling you about the 2018 edition. You can buy it from the IFI directly. You can also buy it from the Fastener Training Institute. But if you want to know what's in that standard, they have a published table of contents that you can download from the IFI website, or just ask me and I'll send it to you. And it's got section on threads. It's organized just like the previous book, broken down into a section on threads, a section on bolts, studs and threaded rod, dimensional, and then material. The socket section, material and physical standards, and the dimensional standards. Structural fasteners, material and physical, of course. And one of the important things, if you know that the new F3125, F3125M is in this book. It's not necessarily new now, but you need to have that standard versus you'll notice there's no A325 or A490 standard in there anymore, for example. The nut section, the screw section, of course, washer section, a more expanded rivet section, pins and finishes, including, most importantly, the new version of F1941, F1941M for our plating. More standards on quality are included, and a section on grade marking. And you'll just need to look at this book. It's got a great table of contents. It's also got a great index. So you can look in the book by either the Consensus Standards Organization you can search by, or you can simply look by the type of standard that you're after for the particular product. When you get a subscription to the IFI Technology Connection, you also can get a subscription to the IFI Online Book of Standards. And that's kind of what that looks like. When you log on to your IFI screen, you'll have either one or both of them. And we're going to start off with looking at the Online Book of Standards. I'm going to go ahead and actually log in, and this is going to be real live on the internet here. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to log into my version of my IFI, and there are my two products, the Technology Connection and the Online Book of Standards. And here's the Online Book of Standards coming up. And we start off with filter by designation or title. So we can look for our standards by product, similar to how the book, the IFI book is laid out, or by organization based on the Consensus Standards Organization that publishes the standard. So let's say I was looking for an IFI standard, and that standard was IFI 101, which I just used yesterday. And it actually brings up that standard, and we can close our filter over here, and we can see a nice large picture of it. Now, you can't print out from this, and you can't save it to a file, but you can capture a portion of the screen. And I do this in my work all the time, where let's say someone needs some information from a table, and I will just go ahead and snip it, just take my snipper out and snip that information and edit that and copy it, and then I'll put it in an email and send it off to them. So you're okay to do that. So that's as much as you really need. And I just want to share something with you that I think you'll hopefully find it useful and interesting is We just here at AIM went through our A2LA audit for our ISO 17025 lab accreditation the last 3 days. And we used the IFI online standards collection during the audit. It was extremely powerful from the perspective of document control. Because if you have a registered quality management system, whether it's an ISO 9001, 2015, or AS 9100, or ISO 17025 for a lab like we have, the auditor is going to want you to demonstrate that you have control of your documents. You can't just be randomly opening books and pulling out papers. And this online browsing product that the IFI has, and the ISO online browsing platform as well that you'll see later, is the absolute gold standard in making sure that you have the controlled document of the latest version. So if you have a quality management system that's registered and you obviously have regular audits, this is a product, it's just a no-brainer. You absolutely have to have it. So let's go ahead and look by product. Here are thread standards. There's B1.1. This is where all of our standards for thread dimensions for threads come from. And you'll notice it pulls up the actual standard, not the IFI version of it that you'll see in the book. So this is the ASME version of this standard. And so there are big tables in here, you'll notice, and those tables come sideways. So we have to go ahead and turn them right side so that we can see them. And that's just by pressing the arrow keys at the bottom of your computer. Sorry, don't make you seasick there. And you can snip out of this and copy and paste it into an application or your email, just like you can any other standard. So go ahead, Salim.
So Carmen mentioned that the look of these standards is basically the native format. What you get in the book is the content is exactly the same, but the book basically standardized the format from the different standards organizations so that it makes for a nice one-type product book. But the content is exactly the same. There are, in some cases, some things that we excluded from the book because it was not necessary, like some appendices in some of the standards. But you have access to the full standard when you have the online version.
All right. So let's go ahead now and take a look at should I go deeper into the online standard, Salim? Is that enough?
Given the amount of time we have, yeah, that's enough.
Let's go ahead and go to the technology connection then. And I'm going to demonstrate for you the central heart of the technology connection, which is the Fastener technical data section. And then Salim is going to demonstrate all of the other features, very powerful features on the left panel over here. And then I'm going to show you about the technical bulletins. So essentially, the Fastener technical data section is broken down by fastener type. And it's kind of interesting to discover that there's a lot of different fasteners, but not very many categories are necessary to describe them all. So let's say we want a bolt or a cap screw and it's an inch variety. Once we click there, we get all the various dimensional types of bolts and hex cap screws, and there are 30 different categories there. And we can select one of these standards, and let's say we're going to want to know about a hex cap screw. And so we select that, and now we have an opportunity to pick a standard. Or we can pick dimensions only. If all we're concerned about is measuring the part, not necessarily its performance, we can only get the dimensional data if that's what we choose. But let's say this happened to be a SAE J429 grade 5 hex cap screw. Now we've zeroed in on a material standard. Next, we zero in on a size, and this size selection will be limited by what is available in the standard. SAE J429 has a scope that goes from 1/4 inch to 1.5 inches, so that's all we'll see. So let's say it's a 1-inch bolt, and then it will give us the choice of thread pitches. There are 3 thread pitches available for a 1-inch bolt. The coarse thread, 8 threads per inch, and the 2 fine threads, 12 or 14. We'll pick the course thread, and it will give us only which thread classes are available for this particular bolt. In this case, it turns out that SAE J429, it requires class 2A threads, or if they're plated, we have a class 2A that becomes a 3A because it's been plated. So we're going to end up with a plated product, and then we can select the length. And the length is important only if you are actually going to measure the part or inspect the part. The physical attributes of the bolt do not change based on length. Now, this is one of the most powerful parts of the Technology Connection Fastener data engine, is selecting a coating or a finish. And every conceivable coating is in here. And if there's one that you wish was in here that wasn't, and you're a subscriber, let the IFI know, and they are updating this all the time. So not only the standard ASTM coatings, but also the commercial coatings that come from Geomet and Magni and so on are all on here. Let's go ahead and plate this bolt with zinc and clear hexavalent chrome coating. We'll generate our specification, and now the screen shows us first off all of the thread data, where the specifications come from, what the pitch and functional diameter would be, what the tensile stress area is, our length of our bolt, and our length tolerance for inspection purposes. The rest of the dimensional data in terms of things like head height, width across flats, whatever else you need to inspect is here. Then the physical requirements, the nominal size, the standard, the typical materials, what the hardness requirement, proof load requirement would be, tensile yield, tensile strength, calculated load for shear strength. Now, these shear strength numbers do not come in the standard. These are just based on a percentage of the actual tensile strength of the product. And finally, we get a calculated pretension that is 75% of the yield strength, and that is based on the tightening torque and the K factor for the coating that we chose. In this case, this K factor is 0.22 for zinc. And so this is very powerful to have on the screen, and then it's even more powerful when we can go back and open this up as a PDF page. And we can save this. It's an editable PDF, so you're able to edit it if you want. It will have the IFI logo at the bottom, and you can change that to your logo. If you're a subscriber, IFI will do that for you. So this is, you just cannot ask for a more authoritative citation for inspecting product or giving information to your customers that essentially helps them to make decisions without you having to be giving technical advice in a way that is that puts you at risk.
Thank you, Carmen. Again, we are running against the end of time here, but we'll take another, at most 6-7 minutes, and hopefully most people can stay on. One of the tools is on the top left side. We have some functional tools. The most useful one, I think, is the hardness conversion chart. Now here you can basically plug in any value on any one of these scales. So whether it's a hardness scale or a tensile strength scale, you pick one value and it gives you the conversion based on the ASTM conversion of these different scales. Again, that's very useful because it avoids having to spend a lot of time. And the whole point of the Technology Connection is that it gives you all the resources that you need at your fingertips without having to search far and wide. So if you close that, Carmen, there's another one that's the glossary of terms. You can get definitions here. You can pick any kind of a term, and it gives you, if you just pick anything, alloy steel, it gives you the definition of alloy steel as it is listed in the terminology standards in ASTM and other standards as well. Then you have some other functional tools. A useful one is the you have the metric conversion chart. Again, useful to save time. It's very much geared to fasteners, so these units and conversions are relative to fasteners. So again, it's easier to access the information that you need. If you go ahead and close that. Now, on the left-hand side, you have a variety of different information that are sort of supportive to the main engine that Carmen demonstrated. So you have a bunch of different things. For one of them, for example, is the raw material conversion, which I find very useful. We often get prints that specify a given standard, given designation for a steel grade. Let's take that German designation. And we're not sure what that designation converts to in our AISI nomenclature. So here you have all the, nomenclature, the fastener type grades that are listed, and you click on submit, and it gives you the correspondence in whatever nomenclature or system around the world that has an equivalent. So in the case of the United States, the AISI system, that 40 NICR MO22 converts to an 8640 or an 8740. Again, very useful tool. There's another one, which is the fastener weights, which a lot of distributors have use for. So here you basically pick a standard product, you select the size of the product or the length of the product and the material that it's made of, and it will basically give you for that part so here you have for that particular part on all different sizes ranging from 1/4 to 2 inches what the weight of 100 of those fasteners would be. And again, it's a very useful tool. Obviously there's uncertainty in these numbers, and we state it. It's plus or minus 10%, but it gives you a very good starting point. Another one would be fastener test requirements, and this is the last one I'll demonstrate, but there are a lot of other ones as well. So here you basically pick a standard that you have to provide or supply parts to. So Carmen's picking A354. And when he clicks on submit, you get basically a set of information that tells you what's required in terms of tests for that standard. So core hardness is required, decarbonization is required, proof load is required, wedge tensile for 3D and longer fasteners, and so on and so forth. And it tells you surface discontinuities have to be checked in accordance to ASTM F788, and it refers you to F606 for the methodology on how to do these different tests. And then, Carmen, you're going to talk about the technical bulletins.
Yes, thank you. This is, many of you who have asked me questions will from time to time get my answer accompanied by one of the IFI technical bulletins. So a customer might have a question regarding, let's say from you, what's the difference between PSI and pounds when it comes to strength of a fastener. So IFI has a very nice document on this. We can open that bulletin, and I'll drag it over, and there it is. And it helps explain technically that the strength of a fastener, when we have the finished fastener, is based on the tensile stress area times the strength of the material. So a grade 5 half 13 bolt and a grade 5 1/4 20 bolt both have a tensile strength of 120,000 psi, but obviously the 1/4 20 bolt is not as strong as a half 13, because the way we get to the strength of that is by a calculation of the cross-sectional area through the threads times that strength. So it's very, very quick and easy way to help people understand many different concepts in fasteners. And so if we look down, I'm not going to open many more of them, but if we look down the list, there's an engineering section, a finishing section, the Fastener Quality Act is in there. Lots of good documents. This is the most amazingly complete resource for hydrogen embrittlement information regarding fasteners. Salim's great paper on hydrogen embrittlement is in there. Inspecting fasteners, for example, we often run into issues with customers not knowing how to inspect something or whether something is reasonable or not and how to do it. manufacturing, metric. These two bulletins essentially are your authoritative citation about why you should convince or guide or help your customers choose ISO standards for their metric products. How to deal with quality issues, updates on some compliance issues such as REACH, what's up with stainless steel, for example, how to deal with thread galling issues, thread engineering. There's lots of good information about thread engineering and thread inspection. One, for example, I'm going to go ahead and open this one because I've used this one a lot, where customers are inspecting threads and they have some nicks, and so the ring gauge won't go on. And we have a good set of standards that allow for a certain amount of torque to be applied with that ring gauge based on ASTM F788 or ISO 6157. So this actually has the actual data in it, not only the reference standards. So very powerful for helping a customer be able to accept a product that they want to accept when it might not necessarily take the ring gauge just because of an issue with some minor nicking. And then documentation regarding how to properly install fasteners and torque tension, know-how with torque wrenches and so on. So if we had time, I would open them all for you. I think we could do a whole webinar just by opening these bulletins and explaining them. And finally, this last one, I'm going to go ahead and let Salim finish up talking about the technical assistance feature of the technology connection.
Thank you, Carmen. So as a subscriber to the Technology Connection, you can ask for technical assistance by clicking on the technical assistance button. You put in your name, your email, and you ask your question, and usually within 24 hours you'll have an answer to your question. And so that's a powerful thing. It's available to our members. It's also available to the subscribers. I just want to conclude by telling you what these different products, how you can access them. So you basically go to our IFI web store and you go into the products tab. So you can buy the book, you can buy the online collection, you can buy the technology connection. Now the book, if you can, the list price is $600 per copy. If you're taking an FTI class, you get a significant discount. And if you're a member as well, you get a significant discount. So the online book of standards is available based on a yearly subscription. So it's not a one-time purchase. It's an annuity, a yearly subscription. Now it's really designed to encourage people to buy the number of seats that they really need. So for one user, it's $575 per year. 2 to 5 users, it's $875 for the 5 users. So the price per user goes down significantly. And then for 10 users, it goes. The price is $1,300. So it's basically $130 per user. There are bundles available, but Carmen, if you go back, I just want to highlight the technology connection. No, go to the technology connection. Yeah, so if you buy a copy of the book or the online version of the book, you basically have access to the technology connection for a 30-day free demo trial. So there are no restrictions to this. You have the same functionalities as you would if you purchased it, but it gives you 30 days provided you buy a book or a subscription to the online book to test it out. Now the cost for the technology connection is for one user, one seat, it's $1,000 a year. If you wanted 2 users, 2 seats, simultaneous users, that would be, then it goes up to $1,500. And we also have something that is offered that is of interest. There's a user shared subscription. Carmen, if you go down to the bottom of the page. Now this is a $4,000 per year subscription, but what it does is it allows you to share the technology connection with your customers, and you control the access to it to your customers. But it's a useful service for some companies that want to give their customers some added technical content and resources just for being customers of theirs. So These are the different products. Now, these prices are the way they are now. Probably in the course of 2018, I'm going to streamline it to give the type of user rights that we have with the online book of standards. In other words, it's going to go from 1 to 5 to 10, but I haven't made that transition yet. And that pretty much ends where I wanted to go. There's one last thing that we wanted to show you. Carmen, if you don't mind taking them to the ISO.
The ISO online browsing platform is a product that we get through the Standards Council of Canada at this point. I do believe that Salim's working on putting a way to get there through the IFI's website. And if you want to kind of take a close look and write down this this URL here, it's probably the best way to get to it. But it's an ISO product that is sold through the Standards Council of Canada. And so the product that we have, if I had more than one product or file available to me, they would all be listed here. But what I have is the online collection of fasteners and screw threads. So when I click on that, information about the online collection comes up. And then here are all the ISO metric standards. It is an amazingly long list. You can't, this is the biggest bang for the buck. I mean, we could complain about the price if we want to, but it's just an amazingly good value. And so I just brought up ISO 898-1. That's where our material information for metric fastener standards comes from. And it's got a nice browser over here to get through the standard. Once again, even though you can't print it, you can snip from it, and I am always snipping out of this and sending it to a customer. If you want to see it in a little bit larger, you can just change your browser magnification and you can get these to come up a little bit larger if you have a table that's maybe a little bit too small to see in the native size for browsing. So so I can go back to my and it's just a browser. It's just like being on the internet. It's how it works. There's nothing very complicated about it. And just, I don't know, it makes sense to open anymore. So the other nice thing about it is if there are red lines available, that is the previous standard. I didn't show you that on 898-1, but it will tell us what it changed between the two standards in their transition. So this can be really powerful as well, to be able to see the red lines.
So Carmen, if you don't mind just quickly showing them the link, and on
Okay.
your slide, you can take it down. As Carmen mentioned, I'm going to be in our IFI store adding an item for the ISO standards. It's not something that we sell. So basically, if you click on it, it's going to give you this link, and then it's going to send you over to the Standards Council of Canada website. So all I'm doing there is offering the direction for people to go there. The actual transaction happens through Standards Council of Canada, and it's about $500 Canadian per year for the entire collection.
All right. And again, if you are a fastener supplier, a professional fastener person, whether you have a quality management system or not, all these resources are just, they're worth every penny. So they might sound like it's a lot of money, but it's if you need it. So speaking of a lot of money, here's one that doesn't cost much money, and it comes from the U.S. government, Assist Quick Search. And this is kind of one of my favorite places if I need access to a, generally, mainly they're older military standards. And I'm just going to bring up one for you right now, which is Mill Handbook 57. Does anybody know what that is? And if you don't, you're about to be amazed. Oops, I need to put that in correctly. And you can also just search this with words. You don't have to necessarily know the standard you can put in some terms. I'm not going to demonstrate the whole thing. So here's Mill Handbook 57. And what this is a registration of head markings, of fastener manufacturer head markings. All the revisions are there, and I click on that. It's going to take a little while because it's a relatively large standard. And so once this comes in, I own it. I don't have to register. I don't have to put any username or password or credit card or anything like that. And it's a several hundred page long standard that we all should have. As a matter of fact, I thought maybe we should put some links on the IFI website to some of these standards because they're public domain stuff. So there's not any reason to have to charge a price for it. It's still coming in. So once it comes in, I'll let you take a quicker, closer look at it. So just be careful before you ever decide to buy any standard that starts with MIL or MS or QQ. That's a government standard. You check Assist Quick Search first so you don't end up wasting your money. Okay. Get rid of that. And we'll get rid of that. And we'll take a look at one more of our favorite standards organizations, and that's the Research Council on Structural Connections. They published a document that's very important called the Specification for Structural Joints Using High Strength Bolts. And if you are into structural bolting at all, you should have this document. You should read it. You should understand it. You should share it with your customers because this is the document that's going to get you out of trouble or prevent you from getting into trouble if you're in the structural bolt business. So, and it's free. It's free to anybody that wants it. Not only that, it's even if you're not into structural bolting, reading this document will give you great information generally just about how bolts work and what's important. So I recommend that you go ahead and download that. It's free as free can be. And we'll leave their website and we will stop and see if we have a few minutes for Q&A. Sorry, we went a little bit longer than we expected.
It's great information, though. We do have a couple questions, and I know we've run over time, but I'm going to read them real quick. We can't afford all of them, so what is the most important for us to have?
Well, I would say the fact that you're in this webinar right now, you probably should afford them. You should have all of them. You should have the online browsing platform from ISO. You should have the IFI Technology Connection, and you should have the IFI Online Standards book. I think it's a great value. It will absolutely pay for itself. And I would say if, let's say, you could only afford one of them and you're not in the metric business at all, maybe the IFI Online Standards book would be the first pick for me.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that we cannot print from the online standards book, but we can print from the technology connection. Will we find the same information to adequately solve our problems if we need to print from it, or?
Well, so yeah, you can't print the standard as a document. You can't print a full page. You can do a screenshot if you want access to the standard. The technology connection is providing the data that it's pulling out of those standards, and it prints it out as a one-page PDF. And you can do whatever you want with that. So you're getting the same information, but from multiple different standards, but basically spilled into one document, one page. So that's not copyrighted. The data per se are not copyrighted. The standard is. So that's why you can, once you use the technology connection, you can access it any which way you want.
All right, thank you. I see one more question, but if anyone, I'll read it, and if you have more, please send it in. How do we get older copies of DIN or JIS standards?
Well, I struggle with that a lot. One thing you can do is you can call me or maybe Salim, and those standards are no longer supported. So it's not so much of a copyright violation to be copying them and sending them on. You might be able to do a Google search and find them. I actually find those standards on foreign countries' websites often. I don't necessarily think that's a good idea to be clicking on a foreign country's website if you're not familiar with what you're going to be getting into. But you can buy them also from IHS. IHS has them. I happen to have a book of all the JIS fastener standards here, and I think Salim has a book of all the DIN standards. Well, IFI probably has more than that, but I would also say, if those standards matter to you, look on Amazon, look on eBay, and occasionally you'll find someone that's selling one of those books. That's how I got my JIS book.
Good idea. We have another question that just came in. Does the ISO solution refer back to the DIN?
The IFI actually has a one of the technical bulletins that I didn't bring up has the cross-reference between all the ISO and DIN standards, but I don't really know the answer to that. I don't think so. Does an ISO standard that was formerly a DIN standard reference to DIN standard, Salim? I think that's what the question was.
Yes, so the answer is no, but we provide a correspondence list, and so does DIN, to say these are the ISO, these were the existing DIN standards, and the current ISO standard is listed right next to it. So you can get that through DIN, and we have that available as well. If people want it, I'm happy to provide it.
All right, thank you. This is not quite in regards to what we're talking about right now, but Salim, what does the McGill Hydrogen Embrittlement Facility do?
So the McGill Hydrogen Embrittlement Facility was created in 2006 officially, and the mission initially was to focus on studying hydrogen embrittlement of fasteners on two tracks. One is to research what makes materials more or less susceptible, and specifically steel. The other one is to look at the interaction with coatings and coating processes, corrosion, and environments that will generate hydrogen. And so the facility continues to work on both of those tracks, but we've expanded. We do a lot more work in terms of characterization of materials and coatings, as well as looking at different types of corrosion environments and tribal corrosion. But fundamentally, we're looking at hydrogen embrittlement of materials and the interaction of coatings and corrosion processes to create hydrogen embrittlement. And a lot of that work is geared, again, towards fasteners, but a lot of it also is geared for aerospace applications like landing gear. The work is funded in part by government agencies in Canada, but also through industrial interests, companies, and so on and so forth. And we have students, postdocs, research associates, and profs who are all working within the McGill Hydrogen Embrittlement Facility. And I'm a co-director of the facility.
Thank you. Real quick, another question. What is the website info again for Assist Quick Search? Could you guys state that again? Perfect. All right, we'll give our students a second to write that down. I don't see more questions coming in. Thank you, Carmen and Salim, so much. That was incredibly informative. And I want to say thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today and for your support for Fastener Training. We have a great schedule of classes and webinars for 2019. Please visit our website for some information on it. I hope you all have a very happy and healthy holiday, and I look forward to working with all of you next year. Thank you.